Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Arta podcast. It is a very special episode to me because it is the first time you can see Arta on the freshly made Arta YouTube channel. So why YouTube? Well, there's many reasons. One of them is that we are talking about visual art, and it is important to see the work to understand it better. So video allows me to do that, and you can hear the artist talking about the concept while actually seeing the artwork, which is fantastic. The second reason is that you can see my guests, you can see the artists, you can also see me. We are smiling and laughing, but sometimes we have also quite bizarre face expressions, which are quite amusing. Last but not least, I organize the interviews at artist studios. So then you have exclusive access to the working environment, see all the tools and cool stuff in the studio. So something which you shouldn't miss. What about today's episode? How could an artist capture time, the human form, religion, and violence with a single medium? My guest, Taylor Jackson, exploits the beauty and the darkness of humanity by integrating music, photography, and painting. Taylor is an artist chameleon. He's changing materials, fabrics, mediums, and even names. So if you want to know why he's doing this and if it's working for him, please stay with us. Hi Taylor, how are you?
I'm great, how are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you so much for your time and for being with me and with Arta audience. And as I mentioned before our interview, I have really a lot of questions to you because your career is very interesting and it has a lot of flavors, as you like to say. So first of all, could you introduce yourself? Like, where are you from? What's your education? And
do you want to look at the cameras?
Whatever you like. You can look at me. You can look at the cameras.
Look at you
guys.
Yeah. So Tyler Jackson is kind of my real name, I guess. I grew up in northeast of the United States, and was kind of born in a small town. Moved to Philadelphia as soon as I could. Went to art school around there at now a defunct school that doesn't exist anymore. So did that for a while. Went into graphic design, was kind of like my first step into the arts. Like I'd always been kind of like an arty kid and into music. Music was kind of like punk rock was the
I
main
can
thing.
see that, yeah.
That's what people used to say. As I was growing up, it was kind of punk rock, and then when you're in punk rock bands, you need album covers and flyer designs and t-shirts and everything like that. So I started doing that stuff. And that kind of led me into doing more graphic design. And then I developed a clothing line for a while. And then that kind of blossomed into, we're doing magazines at a venue for a short period of time till somebody got shot. But it wasn't in my venue. It was like in the same building. The whole thing got closed.
Which city is it? Sorry?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, okay.
It's kind of a dangerous place. Still is probably. So I did that for a while. And then when I finally came over here, I was doing kind of art direction. And I've been doing photography before, but it was more digital stuff. And then I think it's kind of like with reading, you don't really like reading till you find the right book. Photography was just kind of something I had to do for a while. It was kind of like, whether it be photographs to do content for like a website or a magazine, it was kind of just something that needed to be done to document reality. And then once I got into film photography, that's where it kind of took off a little bit more. I started to get things that I actually liked. And what pushed me into that was this idea of cross-processing. So what that basically is you have your regular film, which is what they call color negative. So basically, when you develop it, it's
so the old, basically, film
old
camera.
classic film, but,
Yeah.
So you have that standard film, which people usually get. That same film, same size, they have something called slide film, which once you get it developed, it's the real colors. Because usually you probably remember the negatives were reversed. So this is a film where they come up like that, so you can shine a light through them, and they show up on the wall. So if you develop that with different chemicals, the contrast gets higher, the colors get really weird. And the first time I saw a photo like that, I was like, what the hell is this? This looks fucking awesome. How do I do this? And so from there, I started off with these little plastic cameras from like the 70s.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you've done it on like really like
cheapest stuff.
Cheap stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So you start off with like the cheap stuff, and eventually you build yourself up to the more expensive stuff, you know? So now I'm kind of using the range of 35 millimeter and like 120 cameras. They're all super old. They break down from time to time. It's a good thing living in Hong Kong. There's like a good old camera areas around the town. So you still have developers. You've guys that have the parts you're looking for, that type of thing. So then it kind of just took off from there. So photography, and then after I was doing photography for a while, I have a lot of different names. So I started doing this project called Ruiner for a while, which
what is it?
It's kind of a secret.
Okay. I will not tell anyone.
Okay.
And like, there's thousands.
Shh, don't tell anybody. But it's more like vandalism. So I'd find like pieces of like advertisements or pictures, and especially advertisements, they try to tell you one thing, but there's always the like real truth behind it. And so I tried to expose that by like making the characters like look dangerous and adding like you can add a phrase to something, it completely changes it and like ruins the picture. So you can change one word in an advertisement, it completely changes the meaning of that. And that magic like drew me into doing that. So I've been doing that for a while. A little bit of a hiatus because I've kind of diverged a little bit. But then I took that into, I didn't want to use base materials anymore. I wanted to just start from scratch and make something from the ground up. And that's where the other persona is Kreutz Seivel, which is I pulled the name from the word crucible, which is kind of like the mixing cauldron of things. So it's kind of the basis of emotions kind of mixed together and put out there. So these two things they're different expressions. I still play music, so it's like music is the artistic expression of time for me, whereas pictures are like an instance of time, and then you have painting, which is like the abstraction of reality in a single moment. But so those are the kind of my
elements.
outs.
Elements of your artistic life. So just to make sure that everyone will understand, so we can find your work under your name, and we can find your other kind of a persona, another name, artistic name. Right, so it's two different sections. One is mostly focused about photography, and second is mostly focused about paintings, but also mixed with music, as you said, and other of your creative thoughts.
Endeavors, so if you would go to like my Instagram, which is Tyler JCKSN, Tyler Jackson was already taken. Surprise.
Really?
Yeah. So underneath that, I have like links to the other Instagram accounts. And I think that's partially why, because I grew up in that kind of when that thing was birthing. So usually I think people would be into one thing but not the other. And the way they would mix together, I want to present them in a gallery as separate pieces usually. I mean, my apartment's like an amalgamation of everything. But usually what I'd want to do is kind of separate them because they're individual ideas. Even the paintings, like certain sections are different. The photography, there's like different styles. So it's kind of like you have sentences and paragraphs and chapters and books. So I have like different books where there are different names, and then inside that are different chapters.
Wow.
That's kind of the way I look at it. Yeah.
Wow. And so this idea of actually splitting your kind of accounts it was kind of a natural thing, like you always thought about doing that, or then later on through the kind of feedback you discovered that it would be better to actually split it and
I actually I'm still not sure if I'm making the right choice, actually. I try to run this past people. I think originally, after the photography came, the Ruiner work, those things kind of started around the same time. And the Ruiner stuff can be a bit subversive a little bit, and kind of, if you're not into dark humor, you can really take offense to it, and it could get me in trouble. So I tried to be like, this is another guy, and like I didn't want to. He was like the darkest stuff I could unload on this figurative person, right? And so then if somebody saw that stuff, they wouldn't be like, Tyler's kind of screwed up, like, even though like most of the time I'm just kind of like, I do try to make points, but at the same time it's with like a nudge and a wink. It's kind of like Chiron is like a famous what do you call him? He's not a psychologist, but he's a famous writer who, he had a book that's The Problem with Being Born, and it's like really it's really dark, but the way he takes you through his ideology, it's kind of like joking the whole time. So I like I have a dark sense of humor.
Just a bit irony as well.
Right. So it kind of started off where I just wanted to completely make a different persona and separate it. And then I'm doing that with the Kreutz stuff as well. Like usually when I switch into the personas, I don't think I'm crazy yet, but it's starting to get that way where like if I'm operating in a certain creative character that I've created, I have like a certain way of thinking and doing things. So it's it takes on its own shape. And
I would love to come back to it, to your kind of routines and also your process. Before that, I would like to start actually from your photography, and I would like to talk about two very different projects. So first of all, as your exhibition is still in Hong Kong, in Cyberport, could you tell us more about the high studio photography which you do? And I am a big fan, I have to say. It's really beautiful, and I really love the process. So if you can describe the project and tell us a bit more about that.
Sure. So this one's called Figure and Form. I've been working on it for a while now. So it's kind of like a collection of studio work that is either reimagined or taken from other smaller projects. So I think I've been doing film photography for a while, and I had some friends that were like yoga or dancers, yoga instructors, dancers, that type of thing. And so I hadn't done any studio work ever, really. I mean, since I graduated art school. So I was like, all right, let's play around. And I really got into it. So started using like lighting gels and all sorts of things, all with film. And since it was coming back to studio photography at a different angle using film, it gave me like a different, I had like different play tools. Everything kind of came together a little bit better. And since I was more, especially if you learn through digital camera versus learning photography through an old style camera, you know how to get what you want a little bit easier. So I started to get things that I liked, and it was fairly simple. It was kind of like a fish to water type of thing. So this one I really wanted to focus on. This one, it was like a small idea going into it, where it's like I wanted to photograph them. I know that they're going to be wearing black. I wanted to put them on a black background, and they were fairly light skinned, so that I could it could make them almost seem like their bodies were ghostly. They could fade into the background very easily, or vice versa, depending on what the background is. We did some high white ones as well, so it would just be what their clothes are wearing would be shown. But when the two of them started working together, I found it was like amazing how you can kind of morph a picture. I always find the most interesting photos make you ask questions. They always say like, a picture is worth 1,000 words. That's kind of, I think it's old and outdated. I think the really good pictures you'll look at and be like, what the hell is going on here? And it's like, it confuses you and intrigues you. So when I started to see them working together, the first glance, sometimes it would look like the person had like 4 arms or something like that. And that idea got me going a little bit more. And there's this technique with film. So this project in particular that's still on display is it's composites of multiple photos of sometimes more than, I guess, tops like 4 to 5, at least 1 or 2, sometimes multiple models, sometimes the same model. But there's kind of 2 ways you can overlay this with film. One is double exposing, which you take a picture, instead of advancing film, like everybody remembers the old cameras, like you wind them and stuff like that. So instead of winding, you hit the trigger again. So it's the same film gets exposed twice. And then you can kind of fake this post a little bit when you take the film. In the old days, what you do is the big light would come down and you'd have treated paper with chemicals on it. So you'd shine through your negative onto the paper, and the paper would get the image. And so if you can do this multiple times, then you get images stacked on top of each other. And so what I was trying to do with these was kind of show a little bit of motion to kind of alienate the body a little bit, so that you'd see it more of like mountains, see it as like such a powerful structure instead of immediately identifying it as a human structure. You just identify it as like a beautiful sculpture of something. So that was kind of to show the strength and fluidness of the human body. And I think it came out real well when we actually did the opening, because I had 2 of the girls that are in the pictures. They did, I think we did 2 performances. The first one, they were on a table about this size and had some music going. And I worked with them a little bit on kind of what I was looking for. And then I was just like, you guys do what you want, like very, very talented girls. So they did one dance in the beginning, and in the second one, when I was doing the shoot, I was filming as well. So like I'd set up a camera and film and take a bunch of photos and then move the camera. And eventually we made this film very hyper cut to make it kind of a little bit uneasy, that type of thing. So that was playing the whole time during the opening. And the second dance, I wanted to like creep people out a little bit. Like I wanted them to have make them feel like they've experienced something. Maybe it's kind of reminiscent of the photo journeys I'll talk about later. But so I had them kind of like running around and like looking people in the eyes and then like darting off. Really crazy saxophone music by this guy named Colin Stetson. So it was like really weird classical music and dancers running around inside of the crowd, and it was beautiful. Like, it kind of worked all together. But
awesome.
So that's the project that's still at least half of it is up at the La Meridienne in Cyberport right now.
Absolutely, and you all should come and visit until it's available. So it's really beautiful, and the fact that you actually created this entire environment. So it's not only the photography, but also the performance act. And now, Holy Violence. So what is Holy Violence? It's a completely different project. So if you can describe what we can see on this show.
So this stuff is kind of, it's not for the faint of heart. It's kind of, it's like adult images, but not in the sense that there's like nudity. Although Figure and Form has a little bit of nudity. So if you like nudity, go for that one. If you like violence, this is the one. Sex and violence. I don't know why I'm drawn to these things. Yeah, bam. But this one's a little bit. So I was raised religious, like I was raised Catholic. But as every good punk rocker does, you say "fuck that." Like when you get to a certain age. So I was very like anti-religion for a long time, and then I started to hear about. I think the first one I heard was in the Philippines. They crucify people on Easter. Like they actually put nails through their hands. And I was like, what the hell? Like that stuff.
Is that real?
Does this stuff still go on? Because I think a lot of times, at least I did, you have an unrealistic sense that we're so advanced, when really like we just came out of the caves. Like there's still a lot of very archaic stuff around the world. So this whole idea of like, it's like an Indiana Jones adventure type of thing. So I wanted to see it for myself. That's a big thing, is like I have to do it for myself. Like I heard that you could eat a beating cobra heart in Vietnam, so I was like, I have to go do that, those type of things.
Crazy.
So I went to...
Where are you getting this information, by the way?
weird shit around the world. I mean, like, one thing leads to another, and a lot of times through conversations I find it. But let me summarize the project. I'm kind of going off on tangents here. The project is focused on religious ceremonies that take place around the world that are maybe a little violence, a holy violence thing. They're violent, or like, at least from an outsider's perspective. I think that's what I love about it so much, is that they're very striking images, but there's so much passion and a lot of times like happiness and love around an image. So your first impression of it is like almost opposite of what it is, but then sometimes it's exactly what it actually is.
Yeah.
So the first one I went to was in the Philippines, and since it was a Christian, it was because of Easter. I felt a little bit, since I was raised that way, I could pick out sort of the same things that were going on. Same songs are sung the same, but just different languages, you know? So I went to that one, it kind of blew me away. I remember pulling up, and the van I was in, there was people walking by, like whipping their backs. Their faces were covered with either bandanas or like roots, or they'd have palms wrapped around it, and like blood splattered across the car window, and I was like, holy shit, where am I? And that whole, once you put yourself in one of those crazy experiences, it's, at least for me, you hunger for more of it. And since it's such a wild scene, when you have the camera up, it's like beauty's all around you, really amazing imagery is all around you. And then once you pull the camera away, you're like, oh God, like when you have the camera up, it's a different experience, I think is what I'm trying to say. So from there, I started to see, like, is there more of this stuff around the world? And it turns out most religions have this. So I wanted to hit the major ones. The book is going to cover Christianity, Islam. There's a Taoist festival. I might add 2 Taoist festivals because there's 2 different places that are pretty wild. And then Hindu festival.
Amazing.
So
it will be all in one book, which will be available when? On the end of the year,
I think I'm going to try for, I think in November, end of November, early December, but the idea of having a book about archaic things come out in 2020 has like a certain appeal to me. So around end of the year, whether it's like just before or just after.
And I will make sure that to include the dates as soon as are finalized. And I know that books sometimes takes a lot of time for the final touches, etc. So
right now it's very big. I gotta like slim it down. Like it's I don't know, it's like 600 pages right now, so I have to cut it down.
Crazy. But it's such an interesting project, and as you mentioned. It's to see people from all around the world do this crazy rituals. Like, what is your thought and what is your mission of going there? Like, what do you want to say to your fans by doing documentation of this kind of?
Yeah, I think it's so it is documentation, and there's been this discussion I've had with multiple other people where there's like. Photojournalist, I don't want it to be that. It's different to me than that. It's more of like, if you want to see the core of a culture, a lot of times it's in their festival. It's like they squeeze it down to just the essential juices, like all the artwork, the pageantry. It's for an artist, it's like, it's amazing. So it's like a beautiful ballet that has this kind of dark side to it. It kind of reminds me of, I just saw The Rite of Spring as a ballet. It's about, they sacrifice a girl to the god of spring. It's a Stravinsky. It's from like 100 years ago. And when they first did it, apparently there was fights in the ballet. So it's that kind of ballet to me, where it's like, it's got a little twinge of like darkness to it, but at the same time, it's all for the glory of God. And there's so much emotion in it that I think that's why I love it so much. People are the realest you'll ever see them. And to believe in something that much, hurting other people is one thing. Hurting yourself, inflicting pain on yourself, or volunteering for pain is a whole new level of commitment.
Absolutely.
And so that, I don't know anybody personally, like friends of mine or anything like that are that committed to anything that would do something like this. So to see that type of devotion it's very powerful. And to be around the people. A lot of times, it's not rich areas. It's usually like somewhat impoverished people, if not completely impoverished. And you see these people are beautiful and happy, and they stand for something. Their life has meaning. It's like stuff that a lot of the wealthier people that I've met have only dreamed of having in their life. That much meaning and that much focus to something. So it's like an emotional ride to me, as well as like experiencing art and trying to bring the art to other people, and then also explain how like the differences between religion. A lot of them, the research I've done, like I've looked into many religions. A lot of them cross over. So it's a matter of like trying to break down those walls a little bit about like, oh, look how weird the religion is. Oh wait, mine has some weird thing too. It's everybody has that uncle that they don't want to talk about or something like that. So either that, but it's trying to coalesce and bring people together, I guess, to show the beauty of it before it disappears, and to bring people together.
I look forward to see the book, because it will be something. I don't know much about religions, and I would love to learn. And by connecting the pictures and your thoughts to it, like what you discovered, if you could actually share with us maybe like one story which you have in mind, which you captured, or maybe you missed to capture, but you would love to say, and kind of also introduce the book, what we can find in the book.
Well, I think the book you're going to find, I have so many photos, and so what I'm trying to organize it, that's the trouble I'm having right now. And one of the things I'm coming up against is trying to organize them, try to show the similarities between everything. So I think there's so many stories, but I think one that'll maybe communicate a little bit more of what I'm talking about is, so there's this Islamic festival. I believe it's Shiite Muslims. It might be Sunnis. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a Sunni Muslim festival. It's called Ashura. So basically, it's different than the other ones. Each festival has their completely different. They may look the same, but they're completely different angles in. So this is kind of. Please, people online, you can correct me if I'm wrong. From this is as much as I know. It's almost like a funeral for Ali, which is the grandson of Muhammad. So it's kind of where the Sunni Shiites split off. So it's a little bit of a funeral. So everywhere's black. There's like a color code to each one of these as well, which is kind of cool. But you dress the same as the other people. So I've been looking for this one because it was kind of a little bit evasive for me, because for me to go into the Middle East and shoot one of these would be dangerous as an American, I believe. So I was trying to figure out, like, I can't show up in Afghanistan and be like, I'm here for the festival. Like that, I don't think that would go over too well, especially when you're taking photos. So I was trying to find a place that I could go that was somewhat still welcoming, right? That I wouldn't get hassled too much or even welcomed in. So I went to Myanmar for the first couple times that I was trying to see it. But they do it in the middle of the night, which can work sometimes since I'm shooting film, it can work sometimes, but usually have to shoot daytime or with a flash. And so when I did it in Myanmar, one time I missed it, and another time, like I completely missed it because it was like just a half an hour in the middle of the night. And then the second time I was with them, and it was around when Muslims were being really oppressed in Myanmar. So I remember walking with them, and if you're in Yangon, you have all of these huge religious sites, all you can a stone throw from each other. So to come from one mosque and march towards like a golden pagoda, which is like a Buddhist area, it was powerful because they were like in the middle of the night. They had like generators that were guys in the back had generators, and other people were holding lights, and there's this huge crowd walking toward. And it's very powerful because they'll hit their chest all together and like sing these songs. Very powerful. But I needed to see it during the day, kind of. So I went to Delhi, I think it was last year, and in Old Delhi, there's one mosque that does it. I wasn't going to miss it this time. So I went like 7 in the morning, and I'm like, all right, I'm outside the mosque, and like there's nobody here, and like I'm like, oh, I can't leave, so I'm going to stay here. So I stayed there for a really long time, and eventually people started showing up, and people there were amazing. There was, I think, the word I wanted to get to was there's this doctor that I ended up talking to. Not a ton of English, but enough where like a guy like me in Old Delhi, I will get noticed fairly quickly. So they'll be like, what the fuck is that? And they'll like come over and be like, what's the long-haired black guy doing here? I get that all the time when I go to these deep places. I'll either be like the only white person they've ever seen, or else like the only white guy with long hair where they're like, this is confusing. So I usually get people to come over and talk to me. So this doctor started talking to me, really nice guy. He's dressed all in black, and usually when I start to talk to these people, they'll explain what's going to happen next. I'll ask them questions, because it helps when you're taking photos at these events to know the order of events. So if you know something's going to happen over there, you can position yourself in the right position. You know your backgrounds, all that stuff. Amazing guy, and eventually this guy, and so at this festival they have long chains with razors at the end, and they whip their backs with these, and they tear them open. So I found out that he's going to participate, and he's like highly trained medical professional, and I asked him if I could see him. So he takes me to his car, and he like shows me these blades attached to. At first, I thought he was there when he said he was a doctor to like fix people up, but he was participating. He buys me tea. I hang out with him. Everybody's beautiful, and then they go into the ceremony. They read about. I can't understand the story, but I know the story. Like as far as like how Ali's family was murdered, and so you hear it over the loudspeaker. Everyone around me is like crying, and then the doctor that was just a nice guy buying me tea earlier is now like whipping his back, and there's
blood
everywhere.
Oh my god!
So
is it like a leather or what? What's
from what it seems, it's a wooden handle about this big, like a tennis racket handle, about that size. And then from there, you usually, I think it's 4 or 5 chains come out. They're probably about this long, and the blades are about that long. Sometimes they're curved, but all ages. So this guy was probably, I'd say, late 50s, early 60s, something like that. But then you have kids that are 12, maybe, that are doing this as well.
Wow.
And so there's one photo that I have on my Instagram that's going to be in the book. You have like a little boy doing it, and you have like his father and probably his uncle using their iPhones to videotape him doing it. It's just like a weird, really weird, bizarre thing to witness. You know, new technology with like a somewhat archaic act.
Yes, like a middle-aged kind of behavior too. Is the idea of it to kind of thanks God and to show the obedience, or what's the
for this one? I think it's to because the story is about Ali Muhammad dying, so you're feeling his pain that he went through. I think is the gist of it. Obviously, with these religious matters, it's always tough for me to talk about them because even people in the same religion have disagreements about little things, and maybe I don't know the exact story. I just know what I'm told by people there. But this one specifically, it's more of like a funeral, so it's like you're feeling his pain, you're feeling the pain that Ali went through. Whereas other ones, like the one in Thailand, they're possessed by emperor gods. The Christianity one, they're more so giving penance. So they're all kind of a little bit differently, but I think this one's more so to feel the same pain that they went through. Is kind of it.
Wow. And let me see in my notes. Oh, and I wanted to also ask, so are you still using only 120 milliliters film camera even for this kind of missions, or are you also using more digital cameras?
With these, usually it's 120, which is kind of like the bigger rolls. You get 10 shots, but it's it's a higher quality image. Then I'll use the 35 millimeter ones, and usually I use them in tandem because when you get 10 shots and then you're out, and if things are happening, you're like, oh, I got to keep shooting. So I'll usually have like a 35 millimeter, which for this one was kind of funny because when you look at the photos, if you have my 120 camera is huge, like you kill a man with it. That's a Pentax 6.7. When you pull that up, people are like, oh, he's press, and they're like, they don't mind. But then if you have like a little 35 millimeter camera, like a Context T2,
like, that's strange.
you're like, what's this tourist doing here? You know, it's like you get treated differently by what camera you have in your hands. So, but usually it's just those. If it's a nighttime shot, I'll have to do digital. Like there was one in India I went to where in Katil where they have pretty much a firefight with flames. Like they have torches and it's two teams of shirtless men and they throw fire at each other.
Oh my God.
So that one, it's, I used digital partly for that just because I needed to make sure that I had all my camera settings right. So.
And are you planning to still continue the project? Are you going to other, this kind of festivals?
Yeah, so there's one in Nepal I'm going to be going to. I don't want to give away too much because I think with this stuff, I know it's kind of backwards to be like, don't go, but I go, you know what I mean? But I think in some of these, they're a little bit too many people know about it. And so then they get overwhelmed with photographers. And then some people don't know the rules a little bit. Like they don't wear the same colors. They don't try to experience it. Like usually I try to wear whatever they're wearing. I try to know exactly what's going on when I go in there. I try to know the processes. If you need to do a certain thing at a certain time, I usually try to participate as well. Some people don't do that, and then they're just kind of ruining it. And then you can tell it's like people doing something that they strongly believe in, and then you have this person shoving a camera in their face that's like maybe too close, and they ruin it. So there's a couple more that I'm going to, but there's one in Nepal, there's one in Phuket that I'm going to soon. And then basically where I've been is mostly Asia. So there's a couple in Europe that I heard about, and there's a few in Mexico that I'll probably be going to as well. But this first book will focus on just the four kind of like, I guess, major religions in the world and the ones, how they take place in Asia. So.
Wow. Very interesting, and I look forward to see the new material.
Yeah.
And now going back to Creutzfeldt. So this is completely different story, I have to say. I'm not sure if that's completely, but it's showing a bit different side of you. So could you tell us when you actually start to paint as well?
Yeah, so this kind of happened out of, so the ruiner stuff I've been doing for a while, and then I wanted to get rid of the starting base. I kind of want to start from nothing. And so I went out and bought a canvas, and there's actually this, I realized kind of where it came from. When I was a kid, I had an uncle, my godfather, had lived in California, lived on the East Coast. He had sent me this package, and it was like all these paints. And like a board to start with and a few paintbrushes, but I wasn't allowed to use it because I'd make a mess. So it just like sat there. My parents would never let me use it. So I remember this one time that like I was like pissed off at my parents. I was like, I'm gonna paint, fuck them, you know? So it's like my way of getting back at them. I was gonna paint. So it kind of like, maybe it's a little bit reminiscent of that, but once I went out and like just got a canvas and I got like rudimentary materials, and the first few canvases were fucking terrible, to be honest. And I painted over them a couple times until it was not until like it was the middle of the night. I hadn't eaten. I was like not sleeping, and like I was just in this like weird. I tried to put myself in these weird emotional states. I always liked crazy people art, so I wanted to like make myself crazy, and I just like kind of attacked a canvas, and it was like the first time I stood back and was like, oh wow, that's something. It's like a small thread, and then I kind of kept pulling at it, and then eventually I started to like, more and more started to come out of me as I started to work with it a little bit more. And it was just, for the past, like say 2-3 years, it's been like almost every night, 3-4 hours a night. It's just constant. Like I don't really have TV in my place. I don't have internet except for my phone, so it's just pretty much like I paint constantly.
You and the canvas, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it's the emotional distance, I guess, the emotional length that you go through with like these religious festivals, and also just traveling on your own. Like usually I I get a motorcycle, and I said I've broken an arm in a motorcycle accident in the middle of Laos, which is like fucking. It's a longer story, I'll tell you, but there was like wild dogs in the hospital, that type of stuff.
Oh my God.
So this emotional latitude I try to bring to my work, and like painting, as much as I'm putting myself into it, I'm learning about myself as I do it. And like I think the first thing I wanted to paint was like a nightmare I had when I was a kid. Like, the most frightening thing I can imagine. Like my nightmares aren't monsters or anything like that. It's like
fear?
Not confrontation, the confronting the endless black abyss, that whole like existential doom, like that really freaks me out, like the whole so I had a dream about that when I was like a little kid, and then from that's like a lot of this stuff when it gets figurative, like some of you can see like faces in it, and that's what they're intentionally supposed to be, and it's kind of self-portraits in a way of like how I feel in a certain emotional state. So I feel like emotions, you can be happy or sad, but a lot of times you can be happy and sad at the same time, like that mixture of emotions. So I try to capture emotions at like their purest form, because painting is like the abstraction of reality. So I think it should be abstract, and like realistic painting, I was never like super good at it, and I felt like the better way to do it is to show like how it feels, so that's the abstract work. I try to do a lot of that and kind of make something that you can look at for a long period of time. I think it's the best thing about abstract work is you can sit there and like see something different in it each time you go back and you look at it. So I try to add a lot of layers and that type of thing.
Yeah. So how you would describe the style? As an abstract, cubismist, something?
Yeah, I guess I think it's abstract expressionism at its core. It has a little bit of like, when it gets figurative, it starts to have like a Basquiat feel. I'm a big, I think it's Cy Twombly. I've never heard anybody say his name out loud. So like, I'm a big fan of him, big fan of Rothko.
It's so.
I like the ghostly feel of Rothko's stuff. Yeah. So I try to bring that in when you have so many layers like that. I think it's weird because I'm inspired by like city dirt. Like usually my friends are like, what are you doing? I'm like taking a picture of a dirty wall or like a messed up doorway, because it shows time, like this used to be this and now it's this. You'll see like rust in the doorway, and that like somewhere there was a drip, and that's what created that. So you see it has character to a piece. So that's what I tried to add to my stuff. So like all these people kind of influence it, but I think it's mostly like abstract expressionism, because I usually use like one continuous stroke. That was like when I lost my mind. That's the first thing I did, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I've been kind of branching off from that and trying to stretch that as much as I can. It's kind of cubist, I guess. So it's like a mixture of cubism and abstract expressionism.
And are you still continue this process? I found it somewhere. There's this quote. He works mostly in isolation, entering a deep meditative state, which he achieves through a mix of fasting, sleep deprivation, and loud experimental classical music. Is it still this what you do like every single time you want to paint?
When the really good stuff comes out, it's kind of like that. It's like I'm really uncool. Like when you're actually, if you're in what they call like flow, where it's kind of like you're just in the zone where like nothing's hard or difficult and you know exactly what to do next. It's sometimes like spastic movements. Usually I have like really weird orchestrated music on, whether it's like there's a lot of it's not Baroque stuff where it's like, dun, 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 dun. I hate that shit. It's usually something that's like I'm trying to remember some people off the top of my head. Like Terry Riley's a very like, it's hypnotic and repetitive. There's a guy named Colin Stetson who he plays the bass saxophone, but he plays it different than anyone's ever done it. Like he sings through it while he's playing percussion and playing like two different notes. Crazy, really amazing stuff. So I usually listen to something like that, and then I also find that I need to get my heart rate up, because they say, I kind of learned this after I started doing it and seeing that it worked, that once your heart rate goes up, you get too emotional to make rash decisions. So because you're very emotional when your heart rate goes up. So now like I kind of like I'll pace in the room and I'll kind of like go up to the camera, go up to the canvas and move back and like make like one mark and stand back and kind of look at it and then go back into it and do a bunch of it and then come back. And then I'll throw that one to the ground and like attack another one. Usually they're sitting around the room either drying or waiting for me to like see the next step in them. But it's not a cool looking process. It's very like spastic and dangerous. It's kind of it's that you let go of being cool when you're by yourself. A lot of people like paint in front of people. I did it once at like an art fair and it's kind of cringy. Where a lot of times, because people are watching. Like it was in Guangzhou. I had a bunch of people behind me, and like I play a lot of jokes. So there's one point where like I was writing and I wrote like hi, and someone was like hi, like they just read it as I wrote it. I turned around, I was like hello, and then just kind of like kept going. So like little jokes like that. So that's fun that way. But usually like the good stuff is you need to not be around people, and you need to kind of like enter a different mode. And sometimes you can't be worried about like what you look like or how it actually comes out. You just gotta like let it.
Just be like natural, right?
Yeah,
like
most
being
of the time,
yourself.
I'm like I've ruined a lot of clothes with paint, so usually I'm like mostly naked, and I have these like big Muay Thai shorts because they're super fucking comfortable. And so it's usually just me, like, just wearing Muay Thai shorts that are covered in paint, like painting my room. My neighbors are always like, constantly see me naked painting. But
awesome.
Yeah, so that's the process for that.
Awesome. So where are you staying in Hong Kong? Where the tourists can find you
to
see?
So 5th floor in Sheung So look around.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. I'm in Sheung all the time.
Look for me smoking cigarettes on the balcony.
Awesome. Awesome. What else? So, talking about your paintings, I know that soon you will also exhibit on the art fair in Shenzhen, if I could remember right.
The next one's in Guangzhou. I've shown I've shown in Shenzhen a couple times. So I think that was maybe the last show. I still haven't really shown in Hong Kong. So if there's any galleries in Hong Kong, I'm talking to you, I'm like looking for representation here. I mean, it's just because it's so new. The breakout I had was in mainland, so it was like I did a few shows up. There's one up north, capital of Sichuan province. So there's like a museum show there. I've done a couple shows in Shenzhen, and then there's like this big one in Guangzhou. So I'm going to go back and do this art fair again because it worked out really well, and they were happy with my work, and I sold a bunch of stuff, so they're giving me like a bigger booth and all sorts of stuff. So that one's gonna be November, but I'm hoping to show in Hong Kong before then. But still trying to figure out whether it's with a gallery or else I'm just gonna rent space and throw a show. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you see, guys, if you have available space, let us know. We can do something together.
And they're usually pretty interesting. So, like, even so, I had dancers at the photography one. I had a Ruiner show maybe 3 years ago, and it's all sorts of weird stuff. So there was like I had living sculptures, I guess, where there was like alligator skulls coming out of the ground with smoke coming out. And then usually, like when you go to an art show, you're like, where's the artist? And it's like some asshole drinking wine in the corner. I am the asshole drinking wine in the corner sometimes, but I didn't want to be that for this because it was like Ruiner's kind of like a street photographer or street artist type of guy. So I was getting tattooed in the middle of the room. Like I had my buddy from Ross from Starcross Tattoos, actually also an amazing painter, came in with like his tools for tapping tattoos, and so I got one on my leg in front of everybody. And also the kind of weird part was we decided last minute on placement. It was like right here above my knee. And when you wear tight pants like I did, you can't pull your leg up. So I had like half my pants off, and he was tattooing me in the middle of the room. And we were sanitizing with like vodka. It was like pretty hardcore.
Oh my God.
And there was also a multimedia installation where you walked into a room and there was a bunch of blinking eyes on like a projector and like a couple laptop screens and some phone screens. So you walked in and it's like everybody's looking at you, kind of like the internet. I don't know. So either way, if come to the shows, there's always some surprises involved.
Awesome. Please invite me.
Oh yeah, I will for sure.
Yeah, I would love to see it. Maybe another tattoo or some. Well, you are extremely creative, so I'm absolutely sure that you will think about something
Piercings
very or okay, or like like the violence ritual.
Yeah, I was actually gonna invite one of those guys, but I don't know. We'll see. It'll be something interesting either way.
Would you like to add something regards to your paintings? Would you like to? Is there any work which you are particularly proud of, and you would like to talk a bit more about any of the paintings?
I mean, it's hard to talk about the specific paintings without, I imagine, you probably don't know the names, and they probably don't know the names either. But maybe I can just talk a little bit more about what each one does. So, like, this is, I think, painting's like it's a fully emotional experience for me. So you have, it's visual, it's physical, smell. Usually, this type of music I'm listening to will help move things along. I think music's very important when you're creating. So it's a full expression for me. I actually had, when I was doing a photography show here in Hong Kong, the gallerist I was working with was like, I know you like painting, but like photography is your better thing. So hopefully, like, I've been working at it, that eventually, like, I can bring the painting up to the level where my photography is. But it's what I really enjoy. And then photography is like it's another creative medium, because a lot of times with photography, I'm working with people, especially inside the studio. There's a couple models I've been talking to that we're going to start working together. We're going to do a studio shoot here soon, and I have all sorts of crazy ideas, whether it's like smoke and plants and different colored lights and all sorts of stuff that we're going to be playing with. So it's a little bit more of you're working with people. That's why I like it. Where this is painting's kind of, it's very introspective, I think, whereas photography is just it's introspective a little bit, but it's more of like a creative adventure. And then I'm working, I'm a big reader, and for Bruner's stuff, I used to write little aphorisms on them. So now I have like 600 plus aphorisms that I don't have paintings for yet. So I might start doing a poetry thing here soon under the name Veles, Veles. Veles poetry. It's still very in its infancy, but I think there's going to be a book for that coming out. And then if you follow the Instagram with the photographs, every now and then I'll write a short story of where that photograph came from. So there might be a little bit of a book of that in the works, but there's so many projects I'm going to finish. I'm going to finish Holy Violence first, and then move on to everything else. But
awesome.
So lots of stuff, different emotions to express them.
Amazing. And you mentioned a bit about your routine. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think, well, if I had advice to give anybody, it needs to be, routine needs to be constant. You need to be always present. So like if I'm like writing aphorisms, it's like all during the day, it'll be like something I notice, and there'll be some type of universal truth that I think I put together in my mind and write it down immediately. So I'm constantly doing that. And then painting is whenever I'm home. I would throw away your TV. I mean, I do have like a projector. I do like movies and stuff, but putting TV on in the background is a total production killer. Like I would totally get rid of that. So it's usually, paintings are all over my studio where I live as well. So it's constantly they're always looking at me and like tormenting me, where it's like, finish me, you know what I mean? So they're always kind of like looking at me. So I'm constantly, I think if you want to do more work, you should do more work, just constantly be doing it. And then whenever I take a break from that, there's always the music thing I go back to, which is, I have a band called Knife Fighter. I used to wear just like a gold pointy mask. It's like synthesizers and drum machines and electric guitar, and I sing.
Awesome.
Just put an album out it's like just 2 songs. I have a couple other ones in music videos, so you can go check that out. But if you have Spotify or SoundCloud or Apple Music, look up Knife Fighter. If you see something that is big spiky gold mask, that's me. The newest album's called Join My Cult, because I always thought that was funny how like everybody's trying to like join my way of thinking.
Yeah. Especially recently, it's like it just like this is what I think. That's the
this whole like weird thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with me and my process, it's constant. Like whether I'm like walking down the street, I see like a beautifully destroyed wall, and so I take a picture of that as reference for painting later. As I'm like thinking about another thing, as I'm listening to recordings and trying to fix those in my head, so when I get back in the studio, I can fix those around. I think it's just it needs to be constant, and then it becomes as easy as breathing. And then I think another thing that gets me going is not fearing mistakes, because I think especially with painting, the first ones I did were terrible, in my opinion. And then I'd paint over them and then keep going. So usually, like if I run out of canvases in my apartment, if I'm in a flow, I'll be like, which one am I going to sacrifice? Like, which is the worst one in front of me, and I'll paint over. But I think it's not to be afraid that you're going to mess up, because you are. And it's just if you can be tenacious and keep going, eventually you're going to make something that you enjoy, and then hopefully other people do. Yeah.
That's the process, right? Like first you have to accept yourself, who you are, and then people will accept you as well. I mean, that's what I hear.
Yeah.
And I also going back to what you just said. I just recently someone told me, I don't remember who, that basically to kind of force yourself to work. Sometimes it's something boring, like you said. It's like you have to choose like one picture out of 1,000. And it's kind of time consuming and kind of boring process. Then what he is doing in particular is to sit down, and the idea is that you can work, so do whatever you're supposed to do, or do nothing. And you can do nothing for as long as you want, but you cannot do anything else. You cannot look at your phone, you cannot watch TV, you cannot listen to radio. Like you have to sit still, and then usually after 5 minutes you are ready to work because you are bored. So I'm trying to also incorporate this to my life, and I think it's actually working. It's
just a matter of like locking yourself in a room with it. And they were saying there's like a famous quote that's like a painter's best tool is his armchair. So just like sitting back and looking at it and digesting for a little bit and not doing anything else but like looking at it. So I think there's definitely some merit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. As we don't have much time, the last 2 questions would be, if you had a chance to hang out with some super famous artists, dead or alive, who would it be?
I always liked artists that had like their art was a little bit crazy. So like Basquiat would probably be a cool dude. I mean, other than like he was into some hard drugs, I'd probably avoid that part. But other than that, he seemed, especially when you see the interviews, he seems like a very like even keeled, very deep person. And the way that people talked about the way he worked is kind of like similar to how I do, where like he'd just be hanging out with people and he would take in like different stimuli, and then he'd go and like change a painting. I think me and him would, I don't know, we'd get along. Probably like the same music, that type of thing.
I think so too. And last but not least, if you can, so you have a few websites and few Instagram accounts. So if you can let us know about your present. Of course, I will include everything on the show notes, so you don't need to spell it. Just let us know where we can find you. If you can summarize.
All right. So if there's one Instagram account you want to follow, I'd probably go to the Tyler Jackson one. It's Tyler JCKN. Or SN, either way, she'll put it down there. From that, you can see the links to the other accounts. And usually on the stories, I'll post what's going on in the other ones. So then crutecyvel.com is most of the paintings. tylerjackson.cc has a lot of photography work, some design work. You'll see some music videos. You'll see some of the artwork. And then you can find the other ones, Knife Fighters, everywhere on streaming services. Veles is going to be coming on Instagram here pretty soon. But yeah, mostly those places.
Perfect. And of course, we let everyone know when the book is out, when it's your next exhibition. Well, thank you so much for your time. And it was such a pleasure to hear your stories. And yeah, it's a great idea to have this book done, and good luck with all your projects, and hope to hear from you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you. Give me time to talk. Thank you so much.